post-David Trilogy follow-up. I'm adding a few things to the beginning of this script to clear up a few points that have been brought up in my comment section in the last few days. First off, I really didn't mean to be so mean to Japan. Ultimately, I think it's the exact nature of the banquet that confuses me more than anything. Is it a real political meeting? In that case, why such a random selection of countries instead of making it a proper UN kind of thing? Is it a publicity affair? In that case, why bother making it so secret? Part of the problem there is that, in an attempt to not date the books, Kay Applegate never got specific as to what the whole Middle Eastern problem was, and therefore the whole point of the banquet was left unclarified. I use the whole Israeli-Palestinian thing as an example in the review simply because it was arguably the biggest thing going on in the Middle East at the time of the publications of the book. But there's still a number of things that it could have been discussing: managing oil, nuclear proliferation, things Japan may be helpful in dealing with, things they might not be. I know a lot of young adults weren't really thinking about it when first reading these books, but this is the kind of thing that nags at me, damn it. I did confuse the name of David's pet cobra a few times. It's actually Spawn, not Venom. I get my stupid Todd McFarlane characters mixed up all the time, what can I say? One thing I will not budge on, however, is David not realizing it was Tobias that attacked him when he had tried to attack Rachel. Was it too dark for David to see? Well, no, it's a blink and you'll miss his sentence in the book, but it's actually dawn at that point. Could the other Animorphs have a red-tailed hawk morph? You'd think it was possible, but considering their attitude of, "No, David, only one bird of prey morph, it's Animorph law," kinda trumps that. But those are just small details. Let's get into the heart of the book. In many ways, the David Trilogy marks the end of the golden age of Animorphs. 2 books from now, we enter the ghost-written era, and while there's still plenty of good stories, nothing in Animorphs ever seemed to live up to the era that stretched from number 13, The Change, to number 22, The Solution, with only a few so-so books scattered among those. Megamorphs 2 doesn't count, damn it. It was a period that brought Animorphs out of a classic good versus evil science fiction setup into something much more fleshed out and real. I'm not saying stories before or after didn't have these elements, but this 11-book period really cemented these ideas and gave the series its proper identity. However, the David Trilogy is not a perfect cap to this era. In fact, it's a surprisingly flawed affair that offered a lot of interesting ideas to play with, but didn't go as far with them as I wish they had. I think the first issue was making it a trilogy to begin with. First off, it was fairly clear that David wasn't going to be a permanent member of the team, and they played up his troubled personality hard and early, so his actual turn to the dark side wasn't all that surprising. Also, only having it be a trilogy meant we only got to see how half of the team felt about David. The character I was most interested in seeing interact with the guy was Cassie, partially to see how their personalities would mesh, but mostly because he kind of spent more time with her than anyone else, seeing as how he was sleeping in her barn. I think the David Trilogy would have been better stretched over at least a 5-book period, preferably 10. Have him be a part of smaller single-book missions, hint at him possibly getting his own narrated book, and gradually bring his character to the side of villainy. It would allow more time to flesh out his character and fake the readers out as a regular feature of the series, so that when he's ultimately taken out, it's far more impactful than it actually was. As I mentioned before, the transition from good David to bad David was sudden and largely unwarranted. Before the whole army of hologram Hork-Bajir thing, David was a little aggressive, a little snappy, and a little over-emotional, all of which was perfectly understandable, seeing as how his life had just been completely destroyed. Yeah, he went behind the Animorphs' backs a few times, but let's be fair. He doesn't know these kids. Not a single thing about them. Marco hates his guts for no real reason. Jake positions himself as leader, though David has no reason yet to trust his judgment, and nobody else seems all that receptive. And yet, despite all of that, he was also very helpful in their mission, offering up a lot of Secret Service information that he had gleaned off his father. He made honest rookie mistakes, but never tried to screw with the Animorphs on purpose. And in all honesty, he came to grips with the whole Yeerk situation a bit faster than the Animorphs did. Sure, he had the group to help him figure it all out, but their let's make it all seem scary as shit horror story because we're on a deadline take on it probably wasn't the best method. And then Visor 3 makes a random offer to David about getting his parents back. And yeah, that's tempting. I imagine it would be tempting for all of us. And I could see that turning David into a Judas. But I really don't see that turning David into Dr. Doom. By switching from good to evil, David's IQ went down a few notches, and his diabolicness even surpassed Visor 3's. But as we learn in the next book review, even Visor 3 has better motivations for being evil than David does. I'm having trouble grasping my own responsibilities in the face of this new danger, but I'll do what I can to fight the Yeerks. Hey kid, I'll give you your parents back if you help turn over the Andalite bandits. Cool! I'm gonna kill a kid, drop him down an elevator shaft, and assume his identity. David the good guy was a very good character. David the bad guy was evil in a wonderful way. It's really the transition of the two that we have our problem. One of the other issues in the trilogy structure is that the story is suddenly at the whim of whoever is next in the pre-designated narration order. For the second book in the trilogy, this isn't a big deal, since Jake is the leader and was dealing with everything equally. But in Marco and Rachel's books, this meant that they both had to play very personal roles in David's story that Cassie, Tobias, and Axe didn't have a chance to have. This resulted in Marco and David just totally hating each other, a thread that wasn't really clarified all that much and was never resolved. Hell, it almost completely vanished from everyone's minds in the last book, which is odd considering David knocked Marco out, tied him up, and acquired him without his permission. Marco had far more reason to hate him then than in the two previous books. But wait, this book is being narrated by Rachel, so it didn't factor. And, of course, the fact that the climatic book in the series was narrated by Rachel meant that Rachel and David had to become the dominating character interaction, even though they had virtually no chemistry in the first two books of the trilogy. And as I stated a bunch of times in my review of number 22, Rachel's personal issues overrode the David stuff for no foreseeable reason beyond it was Rachel's time to narrate. And for the last time, all that Rachel stuff was good in of itself. It just didn't belong here. So I guess in the end, my main issue with the David trilogy is its structure. Otherwise, there are a lot of good stuff here, a lot of good moments. The battle in David's house, number 20, the Yeerks' ultimate plot against the world leaders, David's evil actions, good stuff. I do object to the Animorphs becoming temporary morons in number 20. There were a handful of logic errors throughout. And what the hell happened to Germany? But the trilogy still had more good moments than bad, even if it didn't add up as well as it could have. If it offered one important thing to the series, it was this. The universe is a nasty place, and you can find evil and corruption anywhere. It can just as well come from right next door as it can from a distant planet, and no one can ever truly be prepared for it. I've often heard the David trilogy compared to the Green Ranger saga from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and there are similarities, but two key differences. One, the Green Ranger was under mind control, while David made his own decisions. And two, at the end, the Green Ranger repented and teamed up with the heroes. There would be no such redemption for David. I guess that's one way to think of Animorphs, as Power Rangers, without the happy endings. I give Animorphs number 20, The Discovery, a 7 out of 10. I give Animorphs number 21, The Threat, an 8 out of 10. And I give Animorphs number 22, The Solution, a 6 out of 10. Now, I only have one final question. What the hell is that?
If I only had you, if I only had television, new religion, let everyone sing hallelujah. Politicians don't wanna listen, they only wanna make money out of you. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. happy more, we're having fun. The train ain't even